The helicopter's blades tore through the morning silence as it descended toward Forward Base Helios, a forgotten patch of sand and steel deep in hostile territory. Dust swirled in violent spirals, soldiers ducking behind their gear as the bird kicked up a storm of grit. When the side door slid open, a single figure stepped down. Small frame, sunburned skin, uniform tattered at the sleeve. She carried no insignia, no rank patches, only a black duffel and the faint metallic clink of dog tags under her collar. The name stitched above her chest read simply, R. Vale. Corporal Dykes, leaning against a Humvee, snorted. Great, another transfer from medical command. They send us broken toys now? A few others laughed. Tired, mean laughter born from boredom and sand. Vale didn't respond. She walked past them, her boots crunching against the gravel, her right arm stiff at the elbow. When the sunlight caught her sleeve, it exposed a glimpse of pale, uneven scar tissue running from wrist to shoulder, like molten glass frozen mid-drip. Holy hell, someone muttered. What happened to her arm? Looks like she tried to hug a grenade, another said. Laughter again. Cruel, dismissive. Vale didn't look back. She just kept walking toward the operations tent, her steps measured, controlled, like someone who'd learned long ago that reaction was weakness. Inside the tent, chaos reigned. Radios buzzed with coded chatter, maps were scattered across tables, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered like gunpowder. Captain Rourke, tall and grizzled, barely glanced up when Vale entered. "You the new comms tech?" "Yes, sir, set up in the back. Equipment's a mess. Last sandstorm fried half the array." "Yes, sir." Her voice was even, calm, but carried a kind of precision that made him pause. He looked up. Not long, just a second, but enough to notice the way her eyes didn't wander like most rookies. They locked onto everything, exits, antenna lines, signal boards, cataloging every detail like a trained operative. "You ever serve in the field before?" he asked. "Once," she said. "Where?" She hesitated. "South Sector," he frowned. "There's no South Sector." She didn't answer. Before he could press further, a sergeant burst through the flap. "Captain, drone feed's live again." Rourke cursed under his breath, waved Vale off, and turned to the monitors. "Fine. Do your work, specialist. Just don't break anything." Vale moved to the back of the tent, quietly unpacking tools from her bag. Her hands, though scarred, worked with surgical efficiency, rewiring fiber links, tuning signals, recalibrating frequency bands. Within minutes, static cleared from the base radio feed. The sergeant blinked. It's working, sir." "She fixed it." Rourke turned, surprised. "Already?" Vale didn't look up. Signal alignment was inverted. Whoever said it last had it mirrored. He stared at her. "Only comm engineers with Tier 4 clearance know that pattern." She said nothing, just kept tightening a cable with quiet, deliberate motion. By lunch, the jokes started again. "Hey, robo-arm," a soldier called across the mess tent, grinning. "How's the maintenance? You oil that thing or just polish the scars?" Another laughed. "Careful, she might shock you if you get too close." Vale ignored them. Sitting alone at the far table, eating in silence. Private Mercer, new and nervous, whispered, "Why's everyone picking on her?" Dykes grinned. "Because she doesn't fight back. Look at her. She's got the eyes of someone who's already quit." But when Mercer risked a glance at her, he noticed something strange. The way her gaze occasionally flicked toward the open tent flap, scanning it like a sniper checks his scope. No fear, just awareness. Mercer frowned. "Doesn't look like someone who quits." "Please," Dykes scoffed. "She's probably some logistics flunky who got hit by friendly fire." Vale's head tilted slightly, just enough to show she'd heard, but she didn't react. Instead, she folded her napkin neatly, stood up, and walked out. That night, during perimeter watch, Mercer saw her again. She was standing alone on the ridge, no rifle, just staring into the dunes. He approached quietly. "You shouldn't be out here without backup." "I don't need it," she said softly. He hesitated. You've seen combat before, haven't you?" Her jaw flexed. Enough to know what silence means. Mercer frowned. What do you mean? Vale looked at him. Really looked. When everything's quiet before contact, that's not peace. That's warning. And before he could respond, a distant boom echoed across the horizon. A mortar round hitting somewhere beyond the fence. Sirens wailed. Soldiers scrambled. Mercer froze. But Vale didn't. She was already moving. Get the comms online. She shouted, sprinting toward the operations tent. Inside, chaos. Radio's dead again. Power flickering. Rourke yelling orders. Vale shoved past a stunned sergeant, dropped to one knee, and pulled open a fuse panel. The surge came from inside the relay tower. How do you know that? Rourke barked. Because I designed it. He froze. You what? Before he could finish, Vale jammed a bypass link into the panel and twisted a wire. The radios crackled back to life. Command frequencies screamed through the speakers. Base Helios, this is Raven Command. Enemy drone strike inbound, ETA 2 minutes. Rourke's eyes widened. How the hell did you... But Vale was already grabbing a headset. Raven Command, this is Vale. Redirect counter-drone fire to grid 7-9. Target origin verified. I repeat, static. Then, copy that, Operator Vale. Firing solution locked. The tent went dead quiet. Rourke blinked. Operator? But Vale didn't answer. She was already out the door, her silhouette cutting through the dust and light. By dawn, the base was intact. Shaken, bruised, but alive. The incoming strike had been neutralized mid-air. As the soldiers staggered through cleanup, word spread fast. The quiet, scarred comms tech had saved them all, and when Rourke finally asked her how, she only said one thing. Because this isn't the first time I've had to stop a drone strike. That was the night command called in someone higher, someone who knew who Vale really was. And by the next morning, the general's helicopter was on its way. By the time the sun clawed its way over the dunes, Base Helios was buzzing with rumor. Every soldier had a version of the story. Some said the new comms girl hacked a satellite, others swore she'd hijacked a drone manually, with nothing but a busted console and sheer will. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain, no one mocked her anymore. Still, Rourke couldn't shake the unease. He'd sent in a full report to command about the mysterious specialist Vale who had apparently designed the base's own relay system and issued an authenticated operator code that shouldn't even exist. In NATO field protocols, the response had come fast. Too fast. Maintain current operations. Do not engage. Command representative en route. ETA 0800 hours. That's all it said. No explanation. No name. At precisely U800, the sound of rotor blades filled the air. The soldiers stopped what they were doing, watching the dust cloud rise as a dark transport helicopter descended onto the pad. Rourke stood waiting, hat tucked under his arm. Mercer and Dykes were beside him, both uncharacteristically quiet. The chopper door opened, and out stepped a man in full combat uniform, insignia glinting silver. 4 stars on the chest plate. General Halverson, Supreme Allied Command Liaison. He shouldn't have been here. Not for a small comms anomaly. The man's presence alone made Rourke's pulse spike. Captain Rourke, Halverson said curtly. Where is she? Rourke blinked. Sir, who exactly? Specialist Vale, Halverson interrupted. Where is she right now? Rourke swallowed. She's in the comms tent, sir. Running diagnostics. Halverson didn't wait for permission. He strode straight past, boots crunching against the gravel. Soldiers stiffened as he passed, eyes flicking between each other in confusion. When he entered the tent, Vale was there, sleeves rolled up, reassembling a junction node, her scarred arm catching the light. She turned her head slightly as the flap opened. For just a fraction of a second, something in her posture changed. Not fear, not surprise, but recognition. Operator, Halverson said quietly. You should have stayed off the grid. The room froze. Rourke's mouth went dry. Operator, he repeated. Halverson shot him a warning look. You weren't authorized to report her activity." "With respect, sir," Rourke said, "she activated a NATO strike code I've never even seen before. My men deserve to know who's—" "Enough," the general snapped. Then he looked back at Vale. "You knew this would happen," he said softly. Vale didn't move. "They were going to die, sir. I couldn't stand by. That wasn't your call." "No," she said, setting down her tools. "But no one else was going to make it." Rourke stepped forward, frowning. "General, I think you owe us an explanation. Who is she?" Halvorsen hesitated. A long, weighted silence filling the air. Finally, he said, "She's not supposed to exist." The tent buzzed faintly with the sound of open comms, sand hissing against the fabric walls. Vale stood perfectly still, eyes distant. Halvorsen gestured to her arm. "Those scars you see? Those aren't from any field injury. They're from an operation that was classified even above black-level clearance." Rourke blinked. "Above black?" "That's Shadow Directive," Halvorsen interrupted. "You ever heard of Project Echo?" Rourke's stomach turned cold. He had heard whispers, rumors of experimental soldiers tested for neurological resilience and deep field communication interfacing. But that program was scrubbed years ago. "I thought that was dismantled," Rourke said. "It was," Halvorsen replied, "because everyone involved was either killed or discharged." He looked at Vale. "Except her." Mercer took an unconscious step back. The air in the tent felt thick. "You're saying she's some kind of experiment," Dykes muttered. Halvorsen's gaze snapped toward him. "Watch your mouth, soldier." Vale turned then, slowly. "No, he's right." Her tone was calm, not bitter, like she'd made peace with it long ago. "They built us to process battlefield data directly through neural synchronization. No delay, no filter. The scars you see, they're the price of connection." She lifted her sleeve slightly, revealing the faint metallic lines embedded in the tissue. Old, corroded implants fused to nerve endings. Rourke stared. "You mean you were linked to command?" "Not just command," Vale said quietly. "To the entire theater network. Every drone, every signal, every satellite feed." Mercer swallowed hard. "That's why you knew where the strike was coming from." She nodded. "Because you could still hear it." Halvorsen took a slow breath. "You understand why she was hidden now. She's technically decommissioned, but the network still recognizes her. Her access is burned into the system." Rourke frowned. "Then why send her here?" "I didn't," Halvorsen said. "Someone buried her name in the reassignment lists. Someone who wanted her close enough to the front line to test if she'd still react." Vale looked away. "And I did." "You shouldn't blame yourself," Halvorsen said, softer now. "Your instincts saved lives." "No," she said. "They exposed me." Outside, the base alarm sounded again. Not for an attack this time, but an incoming encrypted transmission. A comms tech ran in, pale-faced. "Sir, message from command. Priority level. Red." Halvorsen frowned. "Read it," the tech swallowed. "Directive. Secure operator Vale immediately. Extraction team inbound. Authorization level. Phantom." The word hit like a thunderclap. Halvorsen froze. Rourke stepped forward. "Phantom? That's—" Vale's face went pale. "They're not coming to extract, sir." Halvorsen looked at her sharply. "What are you saying?" She met his eyes. "Phantom authorization means containment." The tent fell silent. Rourke's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. "They're coming to kill you?" Vale didn't answer. She just exhaled slowly, gaze fixed beyond the tent wall, toward the horizon where the first faint echo of rotor blades could already be heard. Outside, the soldiers began to gather, confused by the new orders, watching the sky. The general turned to Rourke. "You will follow my command to the letter. Do not engage the inbound chopper." "Sir, with all due respect," Rourke said through clenched teeth, "she saved this base last night." Halvorsen looked at him grimly. "And now she's a liability to the entire network. If her link reactivates," Vale interrupted quietly. "It already did." Everyone turned. Her eyes glowed faintly under the harsh light of the monitors. Not bright, but unmistakably different. "They've been listening since the strike," she said softly. "They know everything." The general took a step back. "Then we're already compromised." Vale nodded once. "And they'll burn the base to erase me." Outside, the second helicopter appeared on the horizon, matte black, unmarked, moving faster than regulation allowed. Rourke turned to the general, jaw tight. "Orders, sir?" Halvorsen didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Vale, and for the first time since he arrived, his voice faltered. "Those wounds on her arm," he whispered. "Those aren't scars. They're coordinates." The air on base Helios turned electric. Every sound seemed sharper. The thud of boots, the whine of engines, even the soft flutter of the comms tent's canvas. Outside, soldiers scrambled for cover as the black helicopter swooped in low, kicking up a storm of sand. No insignia, no call signs. Just matte paint and tinted visors. Rourke felt it in his gut. This wasn't a rescue. Halvorsen raised a hand. "No one fires unless I order it," he barked. His voice carried authority, but the tremor beneath it betrayed something else. Fear. Vale didn't move. She stood in the center of the tent, eyes fixed on the monitors flickering with encrypted signals. A faint hum filled the air. Low, almost like static. Her fingertips brushed the comms console and the lights around her pulsed. "Vale, what are you doing?" Rourke demanded. "Listening," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "They're jamming local frequencies, cutting command out. Once they land, we're blind. Then we pull out," Mercer shouted. "We can't take on whatever that is." Vale shook her head. "They'll chase us. They're not here for you." She looked up, meeting Rourke's eyes. "They're here for me, and anything connected to me." The helicopter's skid slammed into the dirt. Figures jumped out, 6 of them, perfectly synchronized. Their uniforms bore no flags, no rank. Just a black triangle on the shoulder. Phantom unit. Halvorsen's face drained of color. "This is above my pay grade," he muttered. Rourke stepped forward. "General, what's the play?" Halvorsen hesitated. "We stall." "Maybe." A voice crackled through the comms. Cold, mechanical. "Helios command, stand down. Specialist Vale is to be transferred immediately under Directive Phantom. Any interference will be treated as hostile action." Vale's hand clenched. "They're not transferring me," she said quietly. "They're wiping the evidence." Without warning, the monitors flared. Lines of code streaming faster than any human could type. Vale's implants glowed faintly, veins pulsing silver. Rourke took a step back. "What the hell is she doing?" "She's syncing," Halvorsen said. "She's relinking to the satellite net. Can she do that from here?" Mercer whispered. "She shouldn't be able to," Halvorsen said grimly. "But Vale could. She always could." Outside, the Phantom operatives moved in a perfect wedge formation. One raised a device, a cylindrical emitter that pulsed with blue light. Vale's head snapped toward the direction. "EMP charge," she murmured. "They'll wipe every system in the base." "Not if we stop them first," Rourke said, grabbing his rifle. Halvorsen barked, "Stand down, Captain." But Rourke ignored him. Before the general could stop him, Rourke was already out the tent flap, shouting orders to his men. "Set up perimeter. Protect the comms hub." Gunfire cracked the air. Warning shots at first, then real ones. The Phantom team advanced with eerie precision, returning fire without emotion. Inside, Vale's eyes darted across the data feed. Her breathing quickened. "They're triangulating me," she whispered. "If they hit the hub, everything I've ever connected to, every operation, every mission, it all goes dark." Halvorsen's voice was grim. "Maybe that's the point." Vale looked up sharply. "And erase what?" "The truth." The general didn't answer. The Phantom leader stepped into view, visor gleaming under the desert sun. He held out a hand-mounted scanner, locking onto the tent. "Target acquired." His voice echoed through the comms. Vale took one deep breath. "Then it's my turn." Her fingers flew across the console. Sparks leapt from the panel. A deep, thrumming sound rose from beneath the tent floor, as if something ancient and powerful had just woken. Halverson's eyes widened. "What did you just activate?" Vale's tone was steady. "The system they built me to control." The ground trembled. Outside, the base floodlights flared to life, even in daylight, their beams sweeping across the sand like searching eyes. A voice, calm and cold, echoed from the base intercom. "Operator link established. Ghost protocol active." Halverson turned toward her in disbelief. "Ghost protocol? That's impossible." Vale met his gaze. It was. Until now. The desert floor shook like it had a heartbeat. Every radar, turret, and drone across base Helios came alive. Systems that had been offline for months suddenly blinking, locking, calculating. Halverson staggered to his feet, shouting over the roar, "Shut it down, Vale! You'll overload the defense grid." She didn't move. Her fingers were steady, eyes unfocused, locked into something beyond human range. "They built it to respond to one voice," she said. "Mine." Outside, the Phantom team froze mid-advance as the ground guns rotated toward them, targeting sensors painting red dots across their black armor. "Hold fire," Rourke yelled, ducking behind a barrier. "She's got control." The Phantom leader looked up at the tower camera and spoke, his voice filtered and cold. "Echo 1, disengage. You are not authorized to awaken this protocol." Rourke blinked. "Echo 1? Who the hell is—" Vale's voice came through the base speakers, low and distorted. "That was my designation before I had a name." The files began spilling onto the monitors. Grainy, black and white footage, dates long redacted, faces blurred. Halverson's jaw clenched. "Those are top-level archives. You shouldn't even have access—" Vale's voice cut through him. "You gave me access when you rebuilt me. General." The footage showed her, years younger, in a sealed lab, connected to a chair with wires running down her spine. Scientists circled her, their badges stamped with a single symbol, Echo Project, Gen 01. The room went silent. Rourke stared at the screen. "They made you." "Not made," Vale corrected softly. "Modified. Rebuilt from what was left after Operation Seraph." Halverson swallowed hard. "You were never supposed to remember that." "I remembered everything," she said. "The mission, the explosion, the others, the way you called us assets instead of soldiers." Her voice broke for a fraction of a second, the first hint of emotion since she arrived. The Phantom leader's tone. "Hardened, Echo 1. Shut down and comply. This order comes from Command Directive Alpha." Vale's lips curved slightly. Command Directive Alpha was revoked. 3 years ago, I should know. I deleted it. The leader's visor flickered. "Then you leave us no choice." He raised his hand. The Phantom team began deploying jammers, trying to disrupt her signal. The lights across the base dimmed, flickered, then stabilized. Vale exhaled slowly, her pupils glowing faint white. "You forget. I am the network now." Suddenly, the turrets opened fire, not at the soldiers, but at the ground around the Phantom unit, boxing them in with precise, warning bursts. Sand exploded in geysers. The Phantom operatives dropped their weapons and backed away. Rourke turned to Halverson, who stood frozen, watching a classified ghost rewrite every rule of engagement. "General," Rourke said quietly, "what do we do?" Halverson's voice trembled. "Nothing. She's not fighting them. She's choosing what happens next." Vale stepped out of the tent, wind tearing at her uniform. The scars down her arm glowed faintly under the sun. Not just burns, but surgical traces of nanofiber integration. The Phantom leader faced her. "You're a threat to global command stability." "And you're obsolete," she replied. The two stood in silence, dust swirling between them. Then Vale lifted her wrist and every weapon on the base recalibrated. "This is my final transmission," she said softly. "Tell Command the experiment survived. And she's done being their ghost. With a sharp flick, the system powered down. The guns lowered. The sirens went silent. The Phantom team backed off, retreating to their helicopter. Halvorson finally found his voice. "Where will you go?" Vale turned, her expression unreadable. "Somewhere they can't classify me." And as the chopper lifted into the horizon, the desert swallowed her shadow, the ghost of a mission that was never meant to exist. 3 days after the dust storm cleared, Base Helios was quiet again. Too quiet. The scorch marks were gone, the comms towers rebuilt, and the official report had been neatly filed. Equipment malfunction. No casualties. But every soldier who'd been there knew better. Something had happened that no one could explain. Captain Rourke sat in the dim glow of the operations tent, staring at a static-filled monitor. He hadn't slept in 2 nights. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. The calm, focused stare of Specialist Vale as the entire base bent to her will. He replayed the security footage again. There she was, standing in the wind, eyes glowing faintly as systems bowed to her commands. Then, gone. Vanished. The flap of the tent rustled. General Halvorson stepped in carrying a sealed file. "Still watching ghosts?" he said quietly. Rourke didn't answer. He just nodded toward the folder. "Is that about her?" Halvorson hesitated. "You know I can't say." "Then why are you here?" The general sighed, pulled a flask from his coat and set it on the table. "Because some things don't belong in files." He sat down opposite Rourke. His tone was low, steady, the voice of a man who'd seen too much to be surprised anymore. "She wasn't supposed to exist," he said. Echo Project was shut down after Seraph. Officially, all units were terminated. But Command wanted to see if one could adapt, not just survive, but evolve. Rourke's fists clenched. "So you used her?" Halvorson looked at the tent wall where the desert wind scraped against the canvas. "We didn't understand what we were creating. She was built to link with the battlefield network. Drones, satellites, encrypted grids, a living neural interface. We thought she'd be controllable. And those scars?" Rourke asked. Halvorson's voice grew heavy. "The first time she synced with the grid, the feedback nearly killed her. Burned her nerves, fused implants to her spine. We classified the wounds because the project was still secret." He looked at Rourke with a mix of guilt and awe. "She didn't just survive, Captain. She rewired the system to protect herself." Rourke's jaw tightened. "And when she walked out, she cut herself loose, wiped every trace of her identity except what we saw here. Now Command doesn't know if she's alive, rogue, or something in between." The monitor flickered, a faint signal pulsed, one that wasn't supposed to exist. Rourke leaned forward. "What is that?" Halvorson frowned. "That's impossible. The comms net is offline." The static sharpened, and a voice broke through, faint, distorted, familiar, Helios base. "This is Echo 1, Rourke froze. His heartbeat thundered in his chest. "If you're hearing this, then Command hasn't learned a thing. Don't look for me. Just remember, systems obey the ones who understand them. The rest just follow orders." The signal faded. Static returned. Halvorson stared at the screen for a long moment, then quietly gathered the file and flask. "I was never here," he said, and walked out into the night. Rourke sat there staring at the blank monitor. Then, slowly, he smiled. Outside, the night was silent again. But if you stood still, just long enough you could hear it. A faint hum under the wind, like the breath of a machine still listening, and somewhere far beyond the desert, across the networks of war and silence, Echo 1 watched, not as a soldier, not as an experiment, but as the ghost who remembered everything.